Mary had a little lamb.
The false. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
There was no quid pro quo. There was nothing.
Did he also mention to me in the past the corruption related to the DNC server? Absolutely. No question about that.
There was no quid pro quo at all.
To be clear, what you just described is a quid pro quo.
We do that all the time with foreign policy.
There was no quid pro quo, unlike Biden.
That's it. And that's why we held up the money.
I am the chosen one.
You are for jail. He has to die in jail, everybody. Happy Friday. That's a good thought. Oh! Yes, he has to. Rico. I say Rico. I say, you know, the impeachment indictment should be a Rico indictment. The whole entire administration. Every single last one of them. Mick Mulvaney was out there yesterday confessing. I don't know if he confused the camera for a priest, but that's what he did. And not only did he confess, not only did he step in it, he did like a full-on line dance in it. A full-on line dance in it, and then walked it over to the West Wing, trailing it all behind him on his shoe. I mean, this was like psychotic. I just, and now, oh, well, it's okay because he walked it back.
Now, there was a report.
So the demand for an investigation into the Democrats was part of the reason that he ordered to withhold funding to Ukraine.
The look back to what happened in 2016 certainly was part of the thing that he was worried about in corruption with that nation. And that is absolutely appropriate.
Withholding the funding.
Yeah, which ultimately then flowed. By the way, there was a report that we were worried that the money wouldn't, if we didn't pay out the money, it would be illegal. Okay, it would be unlawful.
The statute.
That is one of those things that has that little shred of truth in it that makes it look a lot worse than it really is. We were concerned about in our over at OMB about an impoundment, and I know I just put half you folks to bed, but there's the Budget Control Act, Budget Control Impoundment Act of 1974 says that if Congress appropriates money, you have to spend it. Okay, at least that's how it's interpreted by some folks. And we knew that money either had to go out the door by the end of September, or we had to have a really, really good reason not to do it. And that was the legality of the issue.
But to be clear, what you just described is a quid pro quo. It is funding will not flow unless the investigation into the Democratic server happened as well.
We do that all the time with foreign policy. We were holding up money at the same time for what was it? The Northern Triangle countries. We were holding up aid at the Northern Triangle countries so that they would change their policies on immigration. By the way, and this speaks to an important. I'm sorry. This speaks to an important point, because I heard this yesterday, and I can never remember the gentleman who testified. Was it McKinney? The guy, is that his name? I don't know him. He testified yesterday. And if you believe the news reports, okay, because we've not seen any transcripts of this. The only transcript I've seen was Sondland's testimony this morning. If you read the news reports and you believe them, what did McKinney say yesterday? Well, McKinney said yesterday that he was really upset with the political influence in foreign policy. That was one of the reasons he was so upset about this. And I have news for everybody. Get over it. There's going to be political influence in foreign policy. I'm talking to Mr. Carl. That is going to happen. Elections have consequences, and foreign policy is going to change from the Obama administration to the Trump administration. And what you're seeing now, I believe, is a group of mostly career bureaucrats who are saying, you know what, I don't like President Trump's politics, so I'm going to participate in this witch hunt that they're undertaking on the Hill.
Wow. That is a full line dance in a pile of dew, is what that is. And then he just trucked it all the way back to the White House. They were not thrilled. The DOJ put out a statement. This is all news to us. We didn't know. Yeah, right, Bill Barr. Remember the whistleblower's letter? The whistleblower said that they were reporting this because people inside the White House, 6 different people inside the White House, had, come to him with an alarming story that Donald Trump was using American foreign policy for his own political benefit and abusing his power, literally withholding military aid to an ally. Oh, it's a theme, everybody. It's a theme. It's a recurring theme. Actually punishing an ally in favor of an adversary, right? Because what Trump has been trying to do is tell you that Russia didn't hack the DNC server, as painstakingly outlined in the Mueller Volume 1 report. Oh, no, that didn't happen. Ukraine did it. And Donald Trump needs to do that for his own political advancement, for his own political effort for 2020. And that is a fact. So, what I'm trying to figure out is how much of Mick Mulvaney's, confession yesterday was calculated evil and how much of it was sheer stupidity. I can see what their defense is going to be, though. And I've told this to my guys, okay? I've said this a million times. I don't like putting it on the air because people are going to they'll steal from me. They'll steal. Because, when you're a very, very smart person, you can argue both sides. See, that's what makes you good at winning an argument, is knowing what the other side. It's like baseball. Congratulations, Houston, so far. Oh, my Yankees. Very sad. Very, very sad. Unbelievable. Houston's pitching is freaking freaky. It's freaky good.
3 Cy Young candidates for the first 3
See, that's
starters.
the thing, is their bench is so like any of their pitchers could be a starter, do you know? And with us, we got Tanaka, and that's what we got. So, anyway, you're one game away from playing the Nationals is really weird. But I digress. Okay, so knowing what's coming at you is really the key, right? It's the key to winning. And I could tell you right now what their defense is going to be, what a Bill Barr defense of all this quid pro quo is going to look like. He's going to say that the President of the United States' power is at its zenith. Wait, you're going to hear this word zenith, and it won't have anything to do with your old TV. No, we don't make those anymore. But he's going to say that the president's political power is at its zenith when dealing with foreign policy. And that if the president wants outside lawyers or an outside envoy, all of a sudden Rudy Giuliani is going to be an envoy, okay, to go over to Ukraine and threaten them or try to negotiate with them or propound a conspiracy theory about a server that is on display in Washington, D.C. at DNC headquarters, the server that he's obsessed with, and he wants to hold up military aid, then that is a fine reason. It's good enough because the president's power is at his zenith when he's dealing with foreign policy. The problem is there's a whistleblower who reported this, and every single foreign policy expert, including State Department diplomats, reported the president's activities to State Department lawyers, to the State Department Inspector General, to the intelligence community, Inspector General, who all felt there was a credible threat to our foreign policy being displayed by this president. So this is where we're going to be, and this is where we're going to be at, and you're going to hear this argument all the time because he's got a half-baked theory. And you know what his half-baked theory is? Is that crime as he commits it is a virtue. We are lucky to have a criminal president. We are lucky to have somebody who's willing to break heads. We're lucky to have such a tough man. He's willing to break the law for some strange reason to, obviously enrich himself, number one. Number two, in order to politically help himself. But we're lucky. We're lucky that he's a criminal. It's a virtue. I swear. Now, Axios is calling it the shout it out loud strategy. I'm calling it the crime as a virtue strategy. He's not just trying to normalize criminal behavior because he wants to get away with criminal behavior. He simply doesn't think it applies to him. He does believe he's above the law. This is very Nixonian in that if the president does it, that means it's not illegal. Crime as a virtue. And Mulvaney's little warning to get over it is the key to the whole mess. If Trump does a criminal thing with zero remorse, then it's a virtue. And that's what this is. He says we do this all the time with foreign policy. And that's only correct if you're talking about, when you say we, criminals, not legitimate leaders.
all things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
I want to show you an example of crime in plain sight. This is what I'm telling you. Crime is the virtue. This is what it is. Yesterday, Mick Mulvaney actually announced out loud to the world, to everybody, that Donald Trump was going to violate the emoluments clause. And after looking at numerous sites for the G7, which, if Trump has his way, will be the G8, because Russia, will be back in it. And Donald Trump wants to host, I'm sure, Vlad, at his expansive, failing Doral hotel. So Mick Mulvaney opened up that press conference yesterday, which kind of got lost because Jonathan Karl got Mick Mulvaney to confess in public that they are committing crime, but it's a virtue. We're supposed to look at the fact that we have a criminal president as a blessing. Oh, it's very sick. But this is what he actually did. He did a full-on, full-throttle commercial for the Doral Hotel, where I will not be spending my vacation, which, by the way, is next week. I just want you to know, I've been on the verge. Well, I mean, when I start to fry, it first I feel it, and then my head starts to explode, and then it gets really, really intense to the point where I feel like I'm going to stroke out or something like this, and then I know it's time to go. So we'll be off next week for just one Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then we'll be back. So I will not be going to the Trump Doral Hotel, even though this was an amazing commercial for it.
We're going to announce today that we're going to do the 46th G7 Summit at the Trump National Doral facility in Miami, Florida. It's the most recognizable name in the English language and probably around the world right now. Doral was by far and away the best physical facility for this meeting. And obviously the common areas are going to be perfect for our needs down there. There's separate buildings with their own rooms, but it's almost like they built this facility to host this type of event. How is this not an emoluments violation? How is the president going to profit from this?
I can't figure, is he an idiot or is he evil? I don't know. Is he trying to drop a dime on Tommy? You know what I mean? I don't know what it is. Trump is obviously Tommy. We have been searching for which character he is in which mob movie. He's Tommy. He's freaking Tommy. And that's kind of sad. But next summer, Donald Trump is going to welcome the world to his hotel, which will serve. They should change the slogan for Trump National Doral. They should call it Gateway to Post-Democracy America. Gateway to Oligarchy. The Doral. Now, here's the dirty little secret. Doral is not doing well. In fact, it's struggling to survive. But then so is Trump's presidency. So you want to take bets on which one survives? My money would be on Doral. You know, because somebody will come along, scoop it up, and run it right. But with him, it's like a lost cause. I don't know. But that was just so sick. And that made Fox News actually say, whoa.
Well, Neil, it's not my notion. It's the Constitution's notion. When the Constitution does not address profits, it addresses any present, as in a gift, any emolument, as in cash, of any kind, whatever. I'm quoting the emoluments clause from any king, prince, or foreign state. So if this were a meeting of the governors of the United States, there'd be no emoluments clause problem. The purpose of the emoluments clause is to keep the president of the United States of America from profiting off of foreign money. Here we go again, not in the campaign, but in some event or entity that he controls or is running. He has bought himself an enormous headache now with the choice of this. This is about as direct and profound a violation of the emoluments clause as one could create.
Oh, for God's sake.
But let's investigate the Bidens. I'm telling you, it's crime is a virtue. It is. He says it out loud. He gets ahead of the story. He puts it out there to normalize crime. And then on the back end makes you say, thank you for screwing us. Thank you so much for, the rape. It is so amazing what a demagogic, it's demagogic. I just don't like that word. But what a P.T. Barnum he is. Sucker born every minute. I was watching that somebody needed a rally. Somebody needed some love. So he went to Dallas last night and he was rallying the sheeple. I mean, I can't believe that people are actually cheering for this man who is stealing from. I've never seen anything quite like it. It is the most. Yes, they voted against their own best interests repeatedly, probably for a lifetime. Yes. They keep voting for income inequality. They actually defend tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans, saying, oh, it'll trickle down to me. Or aspirational, right? The prosperity gospel, as, spoken by white preachers, white men. They took the message of Jesus and they turned it into a prosperity gospel. You see, this is why I have so much more respect for black churches than I do for white churches. Black churches teach that there's one thing you can't have, and that is my soul. And my soul is going to be maintained and pure, because justice will come one day and I will be ready to face the judgment. I will be clear. I will be ready. See, this is why Elijah Cummings, his past, he was the son of sharecroppers. His father was a preacher, right? And Elijah Cummings passing this week, I knew him, and it's very hard to put it into words, but I realized when I was watching him talk to Michael Cohen, which was the clip that the media chose to play about Elijah, he was demonstrating what the church is really about. He was demonstrating forgiveness. He was telling Michael Cohen that he could use his life going forward to do good things, and he believed in him, that redemption was the way. Forgiveness was the way. And that if he cleaned up his soul, everything would be cool. He could dance with the angels in the end. See what I mean? But the white church teaches this crazy prosperity gospel. And so you have all these mega churches down there in Texas literally telling people that they need to be against they need to be for tax cuts for the wealthy, because one day God is going to bless them with this crazy amount of billions of dollars prosperity, and that's what God is there for. And of course, God is there to make the Yankees win. Sorry, Houston. No, I'm serious. It's and of course, Donald Trump with the G7, he wants it to be the G8.
We have a number of people that would like to see Russia back. I think it would be advantageous to many things in the world. I think it would be a positive.
Oh my God.
Other people agree with me, and it's something that we're discussing. I don't know that we'll make a decision one way or the other, but we did have a discussion about Russia last night as to whether or not we want to invite him back. I think it's advantageous. I think it's a positive. Other people agree with me, and some people don't necessarily agree.
He wants Russia in the G8, and when they have been admitted to the G8, he wants to host Vlad at Doral in the middle of the summer, when it's like 101 degrees outside and 99% humidity and very, very slow, so that they can swipe all their cards and, pay in rubles to the Trump organization. Listen, I'm telling you, either this is the stupidest man alive, or this is the most evil man alive, and, the choice is yours. Either way, this is the gateway to post-democracy. This is the gateway to autocracy.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
But Rudy was one of many people that was incensed at the corruption that took place during that election. Pure corruption. For instance, I still ask the FBI, where is the server? How come the FBI never got the server from the DNC? Where is the server? I want to see the server. Let's see what's on the server. So the server, they say, is held by a company whose primary ownership individual is from Ukraine. I'd like to see the server. I think it's very important for this country to see the server. Nobody wants to see it. The media never wants to see it, but I'll tell you, Republicans want to see it.
Oh, my God. He's obsessed with it. And, his own party is starting to get the heebie-jeebies.
We've spoken to a Republican source who was in the room, and I'm told that they were alarmed at his demeanor. Quote, everyone left completely shaken, shell-shocked. He is not in control of himself. It is all yelling and screaming. And I asked the source, who's been in many meetings with them, has it changed? Is it worse? Because every week we talk about, is it getting worse? And the source said 100%. I asked, are you worried about his stability? And the source said yes. And the source went on to talk to other senior Republicans who were in the meeting. They were also shaken up. One used the word sickened. And also they got a sense of the Pentagon, the generals who were there. And they were very upset. And the same thing, that this goes beyond just a policy difference. They were concerned about his demeanor.
So the Republicans know he's bat crap crazy, and they're talking to reporters like Jamie Gangel over at CNN. Mitt Romney was on the floor. The Syria thing, sure, you get that they would be on the floor about that. But they were very, very concerned about his demeanor, that it's getting 100% worse as this impeachment inquiry is moving at a very rapid pace. We've had 5 or 6 witnesses at this point, and they're all saying the same thing, that the whistleblower was telling the truth. And what the whistleblower said was, I am reporting an urgent concern in accordance with the procedures outlined in 50 U.S.C. 3033. This letter is unclassified and said, in the course of my official duties, I have received information from multiple U.S. government officials that the President of the United States is using the power of his office to solicit interference from a foreign country in the 2020 election. This interference includes, among other things, pressuring a foreign country to investigate one of the president's main domestic political rivals. The president's personal lawyer, Mr. Rudy Giuliani, is a central figure in this effort. Attorney General Barr appears to be involved as well. I am deeply concerned that the actions described below constitute, quote, a serious or flagrant problem, abuse, or violation of law or executive order that does not include differences of opinions concerning public policy matters and is consistent with the definition of an urgent concern. That is what the whistleblower reported, and that is what every witness has said happened and is happening. And there's no question that the president has been confessing to asking foreign governments to interfere in our elections since before he was president. Russia, if you're listening, I hope you can find, right? And then the other day, he stood there and he told the whole world he thinks that, China's got to investigate Joe Biden. Right?
What exactly did you hope Zelensky would do after your phone call? Exactly. Well, I would think that if they were honest about it, they'd start a major investigation into the Bidens. It's a very simple answer.
Oh, my God.
They should investigate the Bidens, because how does a company that's newly formed, and all these companies, if you look at, and by the way, likewise, China should start an investigation into the Bidens, because what happened in China is just about as bad as what happened with Ukraine.
Except nothing happened. Nothing happened. I told you a million times. And Hunter got on the TV and said he didn't take any money out of China. Listen, the president is soliciting foreign interference in the American election because the president knows he needs it. The president knows he's losing. The president knows impeachment is moving along at a rapid clip. The president understands we'll probably have articles of impeachment voted upon by Thanksgiving. The president keeps confessing in public. The amount of evidence that they need to still collect is very minimal at this point because he keeps confessing.
So we heard Mick Mulvaney admit yesterday, and he was proud of the admission, and he made it several times over the course of this news conference, that yes, there may have been a quid pro quo, but it had to do, he suggested, with the investigation of the 2016 election, in insofar as that, in his mind, was connected to corruption. He said it wasn't a quid pro quo for investigating Joe Biden. What does that matter? What does that distinction matter to you?
None of it matters. I mean, they keep twisting the truth. the whistleblowers truth, and it is not serving them well. I mean, the fact that he blurted out, "Get over it," suggests to all of us what we need to know. I mean, this is an administration that is going into a death spiral, and it's time for the Republicans in Congress to recognize the corrupt enterprise that is going on in the White House and call it out.
I asked Ro Khanna if earlier today if he had heard everything he needed to in order to cast a vote for impeachment. Are you ready to vote on it?
I'm ready to vote on it. I don't think there's any question in my mind or most people's minds, but I will say that we will continue to do our due diligence and put all of the facts on the table so that all the members, both Republicans and Democrats, have the benefit of a fulsome investigation.
Okay, all the facts on the table, fulsome investigation, ready to vote, because I have been hearing from Republicans, and so have you, because they say it publicly, who say, how can we vote on this unless we see the transcripts of these inquiries that are going on behind closed doors? Do you feel that the transcript of this testimony that you're hearing, because you're part of these committees, needs to be released to the full Congress?
Oh, absolutely. And I think there's every intention to do that, maybe with redactions for anything that is classified or personally identifiable information. But no, I don't think there's any question that this information needs to be released. The reason why we're doing these interviews behind closed doors is so that we can get truth. You know, if everyone is allowed to kind of come up with a script that they're all going to say, then we're not going to find out the truth.
Right, and that is why you have a grand jury proceeding in secret, and that is exactly what the House is. It's a grand jury proceeding right now. Unfortunately for the Republicans, they changed the rules about who gets subpoena power back in 2015, and so there did not need to be any vote in order to give the majority subpoena power, right? Because the GOP changed the House rules. So because of the GOP, the House is operating under the rules that they wanted. That says the majority has subpoena power. You don't have to take a vote. So they're conducting a grand jury proceeding in order to indict the president. Period. Totally constitutional, above board.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
Just want to make a very brief statement in light of the comments of the acting Chief of Staff or Chief of Staff Mulvaney, with his acknowledgement now that military aid to a vital ally, an ally battling Russia, as we speak, was withheld in part out of a desire by the president to have Ukraine investigate the DNC server or Democrats in 2016. Things have just gone from very, very bad to much, much worse. The idea that vital military assistance would be withheld for such a patently political reason, for the reason of serving the president's re-election campaign, is a phenomenal breach of the president's duty to defend our national security. And I hope that every member, Democrat and Republican, will speak out and condemn this illicit action by the president and his chief of staff. Thank you.
Seriously, dude. I mean, they keep confessing. They just keep coming forward and confessing to crimes. What they're trying to do is A, get ahead of the story, B, make it normal, and C, say crime is a virtue. You're lucky you have a criminal for a president of the United States. You're lucky you have a president who will shiv our allies. You're lucky you have a paranoid, conspiracy theory loving, insecure president who, needs help from foreign countries. He needs their interference in our elections in order to win. You're lucky. You're lucky because he's doing it for you, MAGA. He's doing it for you. That is sick. That is sick. It is twisted, and that is what is happening. It is just so amazing. And I have to tell you, every general that had anything to do with this battle of ISIS, any general that had anything to do with kicking ISIS out of Iraq and then, partnering with the Kurds in order to avoid American boots on the ground in Syria in a big way. In order to avoid that, we went and through our intelligence apparatus, were able to identify a loyal group of people who would fight ISIS for us. And we had shopped, believe me, the intelligence community had shopped. And almost everybody that they had found was, terrorist aligned. They were either aligned with Hezbollah, they were aligned with al-Nusra, or they were aligned with, the Syrian, dictator. And finally, they identified the Kurds as being willing to take on this fight, good fighters and loyal as the day is long to the United States of America. And the Kurds, we asked them, would they beat back ISIS? Would they, Syrian Kurds in Syria already, would they risk their lives for us? And they said yes. Yes, we will. And they had 60,000 troops, men and women. 60,000. They're called YPG. And they took on this mission. They lost 11,000 of the 60,000. 24,000 were wounded, and they succeeded. And then Donald Trump, in a phone call with Erdogan, because he has never met an autocrat he couldn't do a favor for, especially if it's in a place where A, he either wants a Trump Tower, or B, he has a Trump Tower, and he's got Trump Towers, Istanbul. He has that. And he also is a member of the freaking mob. And he wants to be a capo. He wants to be a head of the 5 autocratic families. He wants to be part of Russia's, the way Russia runs the country. And the reason why these economies are so bad, Russia's economy blows. An average Russian makes $450 a month. Turkey has a really, really vulnerable economy because their leaders steal from their own treasuries. When these companies want to operate in a dictatorship, they have to pay the dictator for protection in the dictator's country. So that's what makes it mafia-like. That's why RICO, racketeering influenced corrupt organizations. That's what RICO is. All right, so Trump wants to cash in with billions. I mean, he wants to be somebody that if you do business in the United States, you're going to pay him. If you buy an F-35, he's going to get VIG. He's going to get a skim. He's going to get a cut off the top. This is the way he wants to run the United States. And so he is aligning himself with every autocrat that does business that way. I mean, how in the world does Putin become a rich man? How does Erdogan? These guys preside over broken-ass, backwards economies. It's because if you want to do business in their country, you're going to pay the dictator for protection, or you're going to end up in one of their jails, tortured and dead or dismembered in an embassy with a bone saw. It's just a fact. You organize a protest against these dictators, and they're going to bargain, with the United, especially like this cleric Gulen, who Erdogan blames for organizing a coup against him. He wants him extradited and brought to, Turkey so he can kill him. And Rudy's Rudy is brokering the deal, right? But because he picked up right where Michael Flynn left off. All for money. All for money. And that's what, and it makes me so angry when they go, he's a transactional president. Bullcrap. He's a mafia don is what he wants to be. He wants to be a big player. I mean, here's Michael Cohen.
The special counsel did say that you were doing your best to tell the truth about everything related to their investigation, everything related to Russia. Do you think President Trump is telling the truth about that?
No.
It's a big statement. If he were sitting in this chair right now, what would you say to him?
Lay off Twitter. Run the country the way that we all thought that you would. Be able to take the Democrats, Republicans, bring them together and bring the country together instead of dividing the country.
You think he has ears to hear that?
I don't know.
Yeah, probably not.
One is, I think a lot of the compromise is just hiding in plain sight. I mean, they bought him, they own him. He would not have had a successful business career. America's not going to elect someone who's $4 billion in debt. In addition, I interviewed General Oleg Kalugin, who was head of counterintelligence for the KGB. And when I talked about the Russian mafia, he said, oh, that's just another branch of the KGB. It's part of Russian intelligence. So consider this for a minute. You have all these Russian mobsters who are buying condos from him. Some of them are located in Trump Tower. This goes on and off for over 30 years. I documented it all in my book. And these are links to Russian intelligence in the home of the President of the United States. You know, he would never get a security clearance today.
Let me ask you, though, just on a couple of those points there. So some of this is similar claims that we saw from Jonathan Chait in a New York Magazine article about a month ago, talking about how things he believed had really started in 1987 on that first visit to what was then the USSR for the president, and that he was targeted at the time as a businessman, but also one who Russians saw as having a large ego, being very fragile, obviously, to the way he's portrayed in the press, and they knew he had money problems.
Right.
It seems so simple, though. Even given all of that, was he really targeted back in the 80s as someone who could eventually, I mean, what was it about that profile that tells you this is a person who's going to end up at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue?
Right. Well, initially when they targeted him, I don't think they saw him as a presidential candidate. I mean, this was for money laundering, but they gradually groomed him.
Laundering.
And you see when he made his first trip to Russia, that was initiated by the Soviets. This is before the fall of the Soviet Union. And the ambassador of the UN, Dubinin, just went up to Trump Tower with his daughter. They invited him to Russia and said, why don't you build the Trump Tower in Moscow? They brought him over there. That trip was booked by Intourist, which was a Soviet tourist agency tied to the KGB. General Kalugin told me he believed Trump had fun with lots of women in 1987 in Russia, and the Soviets had compromise dating back to then. And when Trump came back here, he immediately started to run for president. He took out full-page ads in the New York Times, the Boston Globe, the Washington Post, promoting a foreign policy that is sounds an awful lot like what the Russians wanted then and want now.
And they're getting it. They're getting it. They're getting it. It's the most amazing thing in the world to watch. Now, I will tell you that just about every general who had anything to do with, running ISIS out of Iraq or Syria or partnering and training the Kurds has written something or said something in the press this week, because they are really, really beyond, staying quiet now. So you have Admiral William McRaven, who was the special ops commander who was in charge of partnering with the Kurds in Syria in order to get ISIS out of Raqqa and Aleppo. He's got the most amazing op-ed in the New York Times. It's entitled, "Our Republic is Under Attack from the President." You have General Votel, who spoke out this week. He was the head of CENTCOM after James Mattis was the head of CENTCOM. You have Admiral Stavridis. I mean, all of these people that deal with, the betrayal of our country are saying it.
Mary had a little lamb. The fault.
We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America. From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
1 week ago, Turkish forces crossed into Syria. Earlier this week, President Trump took decisive action to call on Turkish forces to stand down, to end the violence, to agree to negotiations. And today, I'm proud to report, thanks to the strong leadership of President Donald Trump and the strong relationship between President Erdogan and Turkey and the United States of America, that today the United States and Turkey have agreed to a ceasefire in Syria.
I mean, he got a chance to put on his "I'm deadly serious" face instead of his "Trump is so dreamy" face. But it isn't true. It's not holding. The news reports this morning were horrendous. Also, you have reports that white phosphorus chemical weapons are being used against the Kurds, and that little boys have shown up at hospitals And they've got these white phosphorus burns all over them. That Turkey is... Well, let's say Turkey said yesterday that it's not really a ceasefire. They said it was a pause. And apparently what it was a pause to reload.
The smoke, you can see clear signs of fighting. Now, I've been on the phone with my source all night long, as recent as 10 minutes ago. He's 10 kilometers from that town, Ras Al Ain, you're looking at. He says, quote, the ceasefire is broken. He questions whether it was ever even enforced or attempted to do so. He is with an NGO. They've been trying to get trapped Kurds out of Ras Al Ain all night long, and they cannot. He makes a distinct point. He has not seen airstrikes in the last several hours, but Kurdish Syrian fighters have told the AP that they have seen shelling going on overnight. Now, that is very, very troubling. Kurds cannot retreat, my source says. Roads are blocked. In this ceasefire, this 5-day ceasefire that was supposed to give Kurds time to retreat, they cannot.
They cannot. And that's Fox News reporting it, for God's sake. I mean, that is just amazing. And then overnight, we had some reports come in from various news outlets that they were using white phosphorus. We got it from the Times UK. The Guardian reported it. A whole bunch of, British, especially, outlets were reporting that the burns on the screaming children that were being brought into the Syrian Kurdish hospital at Tal Tamir were enough to reduce even the hardened medical staff to tears and silence, because these the 13-year-old that they saw, a kid named Hamid Mohammed, the skin from his torso was so burned it was actually penetrating into his flesh, and the chemicals that were on him were consistent with the use of the chemical weapon white phosphorus. Now, we've been down this road before. But Donald Trump is going to make the Syrian Kurds into the aggressors here, because that's what he does. He lies. He lies and lies and lies. Now, the crazy part is that on Saturday, before all this started, Saturday, you had a safe zone. The Kurds were safe. There was a fragile peace. Turkey had sanctions on them. Then a phone call came. Turks invaded, started a war, invaded Syria, because that's where these Kurds are. They're in Syria. They're not in Turkey. They're in Syria. So the Turks invaded Syria. They started, bombing them. They started strafing them. They started, shelling them. Donald Trump actually said at this stupid little rally that he had last night with the sheeple, he said, hey, sometimes they're like schoolyard kids. You got to let them fight, and then only I could fix it. So what he fixed was he took the sanctions off Turkey and declared some sort of a ceasefire that isn't real. And Turkey was using chemical weapons in Syria against the Kurds.
Turkish attacks continued on the border today, breaking the so-called pause in hostilities. 120 hours, 5 days for the U.S. to facilitate the reason Turkey went to war in the first place: the removal of Kurdish forces from a 20-mile deep safe zone along the Turkish border. But Pentagon officials tell CBS News so far they've received no direction as to how to remove those forces, and there's no change to America's own withdrawal plan. Still, at a rally in Dallas, President Trump painted himself as a kind of playground peacekeeper.
It was unconventional what I did. I said, they're going to have to fight a little while. Sometimes you have to let them fight a little while. It's like two kids in a lot. You got to let them fight, and then you pull them apart.
But it's far from child's play for the hundreds of people killed and almost 200,000 displaced by the fighting. And Turkish forces have been accused by a chemical weapons expert of using what looks like white phosphorus against Kurdish civilians, banned by chemical weapons conventions. The U.S. has declared a ceasefire to a war they weren't even fighting and enabled Turkey to achieve its primary objective, which has enraged U.S. lawmakers on both sides of the aisle.
The decision to abandon the Kurds violates one of our most sacred duties. It strikes at American honor. What we have done to the Kurds will stand as a blood stain in the annals of American history.
Now, it may be telling that Turkey is calling this more of a pause than a ceasefire. Why 5 days? That's exactly the time that Turkish President Erdogan is due to meet with the real power broker in this region, President Vladimir Putin in Russia.
Why does everything Donald Trump does benefit Russia? Even this, crazy thing about the server being in Ukraine when it's in the DNC's headquarters in Washington, D.C., even that is to help Russia because Russia hacked us and Russia would like to have Donald Trump clear their name so they could do it again, basically. But that is what is going on with Ukraine, who's another ally of ours. Donald Trump is telling Ukraine that they have to take the blame for the hacking that went on by Russia in the 2016 election, or he will let Russia take Ukraine. Do you know what I'm saying? That's another ally of ours. Also, he trashes NATO, which is nothing but 28 of our allies. Okay, and he acts as if there's some NATO bank account that Germany and Britain and France, that they make deposits into this NATO bank account. That is just a farce. That's not what NATO does or is or anything. What NATO is an alliance of 28 countries. And each country, thanks to Obama, had to agree that they had to pay 2% of their gross domestic product on their own defense. There's no joint bank account. And Donald Trump makes it sound like we're in charge of NATO and there's some bank account. There's no bank account. I mean, I don't know why he does it. I mean, I do know why. It's because Vladimir Putin hates NATO. NATO was put together after Europe was inundated with fascism, so that no European country would ever try that crap again, and to push back the influence of communism as it was being exported by Stalin in Russia after World War II. That's what NATO is. Well, Vladimir Putin hates NATO. Vladimir Putin wants to own Ukraine. Vladimir Putin wants his port in Syria. Vladimir Putin wants Turkey. Vladimir Putin wants control over the Middle East. And that's what Vladimir Putin is getting. He also wants to be back in the G8, which I believe Donald Trump has been advocating for. I mean, why? Why is everything that Donald Trump does a full-out, full-frontal betrayal of people who are our allies, who want democratic, free, and open societies, and pro-Russia, where they kill journalists, where people make $450 a month, but Vladimir Putin is the richest man in the world? Why is he pro-Putin? Because he wants to be in that club.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
I just spoke to President Erdogan of Turkey. We're doing very, very well with Turkey. There's a ceasefire or a pause or whatever you want to call it.
It's a pause to
reload. There was some sniper fire this morning. There was mortar fire this morning that was eliminated quickly.
Oh, my God.
And they're back to the full pause. We have ISIS totally under guard.
Oh, my God.
Turkey is also guarding separately. They're watching over everything.
Oh, my God.
So you have the Kurds who we're dealing with and are very happy about the way things are going, I must say. The Kurds, and you also have the Turks watching, just secondarily watching. So we have ISIS under control. We've taken control of the oil in the Middle East, the oil that we're talking about, the oil that everybody was worried about. The U.S. has control of that. And there are no shots being fired. And a lot of people are doing a lot of things. This is a deal that should have been made 15 years ago, 10 years ago. Over the last number of years under the Obama administration, the real number is over 1 million people were killed. We have lost not a drop of blood since we've started what I've started. And it was, so far it's working out. Look, it's a complicated region. Many, many people have gone down. I have to watch in great interest as I see people talking about what we should be doing. And these are the same people that have been failing for the last 20 years, didn't know what they were doing, especially when they went in and did what they did. They shouldn't have been there. But we're doing a very, very significant amount of great work. We'll see if it works. It's very fragile. It's been fragile for years. They've been fighting each other for centuries. Literally for centuries they've been fighting each other.
Oh, he's insane.
And years ago we injected ourselves right into the middle of it.
All right, then.
Look, I don't say this lightly, and I worked for 2 years in the Trump administration. He doesn't know what he's doing or talking about. He made this decision on Sunday night and without any contingency plan for our troops on the ground. And to make it worse, he cut our force, the president did, by 50% earlier this year for no reason. And we already had a very small force there. And when Turkey came in, very predictably, the unraveling began immediately. And our forces now on the ground don't even have enough manpower to deal with an evacuation. You know, Rachel, when you're in these areas, I've been to this facility. I used to go into Syria every month, every 2 months. I have a very good feeling for the situation. And you always have an evacuation plan. This is the extreme scenario, an emergency evacuation where we have to bomb our own facility. This is a disaster, and it shows a national security process that is totally broken down, decision making by the commander-in-chief with no consultation, no thought, no consideration of consequence, with Americans on the ground in harm's way. It's a very serious situation, and as the Americans were evacuating that base and bombing the facility as they left, the president was saying this was a strategically wise decision and everything was going well. It's totally incoherent.
So the evidence is that we had to bomb our own base. And that's plan Z for how you leave a war zone or how you leave a country or how you leave posts or bases. You don't do it in such a willy-nilly way that you have to blow up your own base. The idea that ISIS didn't escape is a lie. This is what Donald Trump just said from the Oval Office this morning. ISIS is secure. No, ISIS was allowed to escape. We know that from the beginning of the week. The idea that the oil fields are somehow protected by the United States is bullcrap. Obviously, if you have 25, 50 troops in an area, how are they securing ISIS, securing oil fields, and securing the allies? And if the roads are blocked and the Kurds can't even leave, as they might be willing to do, but the Turks have blocked the way out so that they could corral them and kill them, which is what Turkey wants to do to them, then how in the world does the American president say, oh, okay, we'll bomb our own base, block the roads, corral all the Kurds, go ahead and use white phosphorus and chemical weapons on them, go ahead and invade Syria, and then tells everybody this was a brilliant plan. There is no plan. That's why we had to bomb our own base this week. There is no plan. And I will tell you, every single general who had anything to do with the effort that the Kurds exerted on our behalf in Syria against ISIS is trying to tell you something. William McRaven, who was the special ops commander, and special ops was who was in charge of this. He said, these men and women of all political persuasions have seen the assaults on our institutions, our intelligence and law enforcement community, the State Department and the press. They have seen our leaders stand beside despots and strongmen, preferring their government narrative to our own. They have seen us abandon our allies, and they have heard the shouts of betrayal from the battlefield. He said, as I stood on the parade field at Fort Bragg, one retired 4-star general grabbed my arm, shook me, and shouted, I don't like Democrats, but Trump is destroying the republic. These words echoed with me throughout the week. It's easy to destroy an organization if you have no appreciation for what makes that organization great. We are not the most powerful nation in the world because of our aircraft carriers or our economy or our seat on the UN Security Council. We are the most powerful nation in the world because we try to be the good guys. We are the most powerful nation in the world because our ideals of universal freedom and equality have been backed up by our belief that we were champions of justice and the protectors of the less fortunate. But if we don't care about our values, and if we don't care about duty and honor, and if we don't help the weak, and if we don't stand up against oppression and injustice, what happens to the Kurds? What happens to the Iraqis, the Afghans, the Syrians, the Rohingyas, the South Sudanese, and the millions of people under the boot of tyranny or left abandoned by their failing states? If our promises are meaningless, how will our allies ever trust us? If we can't have faith in our nation's principles, why would the men and women of this nation join the military? And if they don't join, who protects us? If we're not the champions of good, then who will follow us? And if no one follows us, where does the world end up? President Trump seems to believe these qualities are unimportant, or these qualities show weakness, and he is wrong. These are the virtues that have sustained this nation for the past 243 years. If we hope to continue to lead the world and inspire a new generation of young men and women to our cause, we have to embrace these values now more than ever. This president does not understand their importance. And if this president doesn't demonstrate the leadership that America needs domestically and abroad, then it is time for a new person in the Oval Office, Republican, Democrat, or Independent, and the sooner the better, because the fate of our republic depends on it. Now, the military has been abused and misused. The intelligence community was silenced and supplanted by Dick Cheney and Condoleezza Rice going on the TV and saying, oh, ignore the intelligence agencies. I get it.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
I do stand before you, as was noted here, really having achieved greatness. I mean, I'm not just an overrated general. I am the greatest, the world's most overrated. And so I would just tell you, too, that I'm honored to be considered that by Donald Trump, because he also called Meryl Streep an overrated actress. So I guess I'm the Meryl Streep of generals. And frankly, that sounds pretty good to me.
All right, Shecky.
And you do have to admit that between me and Meryl, at least we've had some victories.
Ha!
And some of you were kind during the reception and asked me, if this bothered me to have been rated this way based on what Donald Trump said. I said, of course not. I'd earned my spurs on the battlefield, Martin, as you pointed out, and Donald Trump earned his spurs in a letter from a doctor. So, not in the least bit put out by it. And I think the only person in the military that Mr. Trump doesn't think is overrated is who you pointed out, Martin, and that's Colonel Sanders. Oh!
Yeah, okay, Shecky. So Mattis did shtick last night at the Al Smith dinner. And remember, Donald Trump ran for president because Obama did shtick at the Gridiron dinner, right? And trashed him and said, it was a tough decision about whether to fire Gary Busey or, Little John. So these things matter in their weird way. But I have to say, I was just telling you, I understand what happened with Bush, okay? With Bush, what we had was an intelligence community that told us that 9/11 was happening. You remember the lights were blinking red, everybody's hair was on fire. There was a FBI agent in the middle of the country who was trying to tell the government of the United States that there were these sleeper cells in the United States, that they were Saudi Arabians, and that they were, planning to take over airlines, that they had taken flight lessons. They were only interested in flying. They weren't interested in landing. Remember her? She was somewhere in, I think she was in Minnesota. And she was a hero. And, we had other people, Colin Powell's, guy, Larry Wilkerson, and other people who were testified after 9/11 that the lights were blinking red and everybody's hair was on fire. And yet nothing was done to stop it that was successful. That's what we can say, because it happened, right? And then after that, they started immediately, we found out way after the fact when we had the 9/11 Commission, that John Ashcroft, that what's his face, Rumsfeld, was running around telling everybody, we have to use this so that we can invade Iraq. We have to twist this. We have to turn this. We have to sell this to the American people. This is our entry into Iraq. And George W. was like all about it because his father, didn't get Saddam Hussein, and he was going to make it right. And he came in wanting a war with Iraq. And so what we had was an intelligence community that was, warning us about 9/11 on the front end. And then on the back end, we had the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency. We had Scott Ritter, all the weapons inspectors telling us that Saddam Hussein did not have weapons of mass destruction. And back then, the intelligence agencies were overridden, too. They were shunted aside. We were told not to believe Hans Blix. We were told not to believe Scott Ritter. In fact, they smeared Scott Ritter almost beyond belief. I'll just leave it at that. And the intelligence was ignored, and a marketing campaign to sell America on the invasion of Iraq, an unarmed nation in the end, was waged against the American people on the TV. You had Condoleezza Rice, Dick Cheney, all from the same hymnal. We don't want the smoking gun to be a mushroom cloud, insinuating that Saddam Hussein had nuclear weapons, right? And meanwhile, we had the whole intelligence community. We had the entire international community telling us, the weapons inspectors on the ground, telling us over and over and over and over again, there are no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. There aren't. You won't find any there. Oh, chemical belts around Baghdad, and nuclear weapons are going to be smoking guns, mushroom clouds, and all this stuff. And now everyone that supported that invasion on the Republican side of things, they'll all say, oh, I wasn't for that war, when they clearly were, and they were bamboozled. The same damn thing is happening now. The same damn thing is happening now. But this salesman of ours, this guy who, thinks he can sell ice to Eskimos because he knows his audience is as dumb as they are. And he knows at least he could sell them, because it's not about the pitch. It's about how vulnerable and stupid the people you're trying to sell timeshares to are. But this man is losing that sale because back then the generals said nothing. Back then, the generals went along with it. Back then, the generals were very quiet. They didn't speak up. They didn't speak out. And that is why I've had a beef with, I don't have a beef with enlisted people. I don't have a beef with, people who, are captains or, lieutenants, first and second lieutenants, so, beginning. But once you start climbing those ranks, once you start with, a colonel and lieutenant colonel and general and 1-star, 2-star, they stay quiet. No matter how wrong the war is, except not this time. He's losing even against the war hawks. What should that tell you? This should tell you that they know he is the real danger. Everybody showed this James Mattis doing shtick. But very few people caught the part where General Mattis tried to warn you about Donald Trump. And the way that the generals do it is, well, he's the commander-in-chief and I have to respect. No, I'm sorry. You don't. You don't. He's a liar. He's a thief. He's a cheat. He's sacrificing allies all over this world. The policy is Russia's, not ours. He is an asset of Putin's. He asks every autocrat to interfere in our elections. So Mattis took a moment.
After extolling the wisdom of the founders and of our constitutional system, Lincoln observed great nations crumble for one of two reasons. The first is aggression from the outside, a prospect Lincoln declared that in America's case was inconceivable. As he put it with a flourish of memorable cadences, all the armies of Europe, Asia, and Africa combined with all the treasure of the earth in their military chest, with a Bonaparte for a commander, could not by force take a drink from the Ohio River or make a track over the Blue Ridge Mountains in a trial of 1,000 years. No, Lincoln went on, it was not the foreign aggressor we must fear. It was corrosion from within, the rot, the viciousness, the lassitude, the ignorance. Anarchy is one potential consequence of all this. Another is the rise of an ambitious leader, unfettered by conscience or precedent or decency, who would make himself supreme.
Oh! Trying to tell you something in their weird general way. I gotta say, I never liked that way, but that is who they are. He tried to tell you something.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
Are you surprised that this ceasefire seems to have really not taken hold at all? We still see violence overnight.
I'm entirely unsurprised. I mean, one way to look at this is that President Erdogan and President Trump buried the hatchet. They buried it right in the back of the Kurds. This is approaching ethnic cleansing. 300,000 Kurds being pushed out of this so-called buffer zone, 70,000 of them children. Newsflash, winter is coming. This is a humanitarian crisis, first and foremost. And then secondly, ISIS is a winner here. They will resurge. Iran is a winner here. Vladimir Putin and Russia are pulling those puppet strings. This is a bad day for American diplomacy.
It's a bad day, everybody. All right, Tom in Florida.
Hey, Randi, how's the foxiest lady on Free Speech TV?
Oh, you're
doing?
so sweet. Thank you very much.
Hey, excuse me. I'm the same guy that did that little trick with the Trump hats.
Right. Oh, how are you?
Oh, I'm hanging in there. Just kind of wanted to give you a heads up on Syria. I got a nephew who's a Special Forces Ranger that's over there right now.
Oh, no.
Yeah, well, him and a few of the other bad boys, Rangers and a couple SEALs, are they're not going to leave. If Trump wants to pull us out of there, he said, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to abandon my war buddies, the Kurds. He said that have fought and died beside me. He said it ain't right. You know,
you're giving me chills. You know what? I thought about what I would do, and I don't know the answer, because if you don't leave, then you're court-martialable, right? You're jailable, and if you do, then you've shamed yourself. So that is, it's so nauseating.
I know. It's damned if you do, twice if you don't.
Yeah.
But he said, as far as he's concerned, you know, he's a warrior, and he's not going to abandon the people that he's fought and had die in his arms, and you know, it's cowardly in a way to just leave them guys there, because you know, I know Colonel Bone Spur thinks that ISIS is whipped. No, they're just waiting.
Oh, they're all over the place. I mean, we watched them escape. We saw it on the TV. You know, you got actual footage of the what they call the Turkish-backed Syrian militias. Okay, and who are those people? Those are Al Qaeda and those are ISIS. Those are people that defected and joined these terrorist groups, and they're running all over the country. We have a couple of guys like your nephew. Who are just scattered willy-nilly all over the freaking place, and being told to stand aside and let ISIS and Al-Qaeda slaughter the people that they just stood with to jail ISIS and Al-Qaeda. This man is such he's such an F-up. I don't even know what to say anymore without being, fined for language. But you know what I want to say.
Yeah, I'll tell you another thing about our commander in chief. My cousin, who's a contractor, did bunch of work on one of his Trump Tower buildings. And,
did he get stiffed? Yeah.
Well, here's the good part. When he finished the job, everything was perfect. They had a contract. The balance of it was $168,000. They just said, "No, we're not going to pay you."
Yeah.
I go, "Why not?" He goes, "We're not going to pay you." They said, "Go ahead and sue us." He says, "By the time our bank of lawyers are done with you 10 years later, you'll spend more on lawyers than you will to ever recover that money." So, great guy.
Yeah. Well, that's what he does. You know, it's funny. I was watching during the show, the mayor of Doral, Florida was on TV, and he said nobody told him about the G7. So what's going to happen is Doral, the small community that it is going to spend all this money on security and spend all this money securing Doral, and they'll get stiff, just like every place where he has his rally. He never pays for the arena. El Paso, you know, they're still asking him for the money for the rally. Yeah, that's what he does. That's what he does.
Same deal with Panama City Beach. That's where I made the money.
Yeah.
Selling them goofy hats. I'm proud to say that after it was all said and done, I had back orders. I raised almost $1,000 and donated it to free speech.
Oh, that's so awesome. Thank you, Tom. And thanks for the compliment. I got to be in a bathing suit next week, so I'll have you playing in my head.
Yeah. I'll be watching there.
No, you won't be watching. I just, no. I'll just be.
I might be doing other things that we can't talk about on the radio.
You are a real man, that is for sure.
You
Thank
have
you.
a good one.
You too, sir.
Keep up the good work.
You keep it up. You're the man. All right.
Take care.
You too. All right. Susan in California.
Oh, hi, Randy. I almost fell asleep.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Hi. Okay. This is my idea. It may sound a little simple-minded, but I think it could work. We know who all the crooks are, his gang, right? And we've already arrested a bunch of them.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we just let one of them go for $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so we keep going. I mean, you can sort of take your eyes off Trump for a moment. We keep going. It won't take very long. Even his kids are vulnerable. We just get them all on these criminal charges, indict them, or put them in prison without bail. He'll be all alone in that dang White House, and he won't be able to handle it.
Well, he'll pardon everybody unless the states step up, because the pardon power has no effect on state charges. But you know that's why it's so important to keep your eye on SDNY.
Yes, I know that.
Okay.
And also, isn't it possible for some mental health people to come? All
right, we've been there, done that. That's not going to happen. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Pete in Tennessee.
Hi, Randy.
Hi, Pete.
Hey, I know you needed a vacation.
Yes,
and
I do. I'm sorry, I have to.
I'm on vacation next week too, and I know how you feel. But anyway, with the ISIS, getting loose, our nation not being safe, do you think? I mean, if we have some sort of spectacular, God forbid,
I know where you're going. Yes,
attack,
yes, I know where you're going.
What I fear is this. I mean, I wouldn't put it past this guy to suspend habeas corpus.
I know.
That's what scares me.
I think that's what's scary. I think that's what's making the generals speak out. I really do. I think that the generals understand that the real threat is from within. And I think that's the only reason why they're speaking out, because when we went and invaded Iraq for no damn reason, they said nothing, right? Obviously, the intelligence community was telling us, no, there's no reason to go. There's no reason to go. And a lot of people in this audience think that, the intelligence agency lied us into Iraq. No, exactly the opposite. The intelligence agencies told us there was no need to go into Iraq. It was, Bush and Cheney and Condi and Colin Powell was the general, and he went along with it, right? So why is it so interesting to me that the generals now are speaking up and speaking out? There's two reasons. One, they know that we're abandoning all of our allies on the battlefield, which for them is unconscionable, but 2, they know where the real threat to America is. I don't think that they thought that W would ever do martial law, or W would ever suspend habeas corpus, or W would ever do anything, like declare an emergency or move money around.
I wouldn't put it past this guy.
But this guy's already shown you who he is. This guy has shown you that he will jail little children. He will separate breastfeeding mothers from infants. He has shown you that he has no respect for the law 8 ways to Sunday. He has shown you that he would, declare some non-existent emergency and try and move money. The courts have stopped him so far. He has shown you that he will defy congressional subpoenas. He will never cooperate with any investigation of him because he's dirty as hell. And I think the generals understand. Hence, this is why it was so important what Mattis said about Lincoln last night, that we will only ever be destroyed from within when a man who has no conscience, no morals, no allegiance to this nation makes himself supreme.
I try to, unfortunately, I live in Trump country. I try to, talk to these people. I can't get through to them.
Well, there are some people who are coming around. They're mostly independents who lean Republican, but they are for impeachment now. The majority of the country is. They want him removed too. So
I just think they need to step on the gas and. The Republicans need to come around, and this guy's got to go.
He does. He has to go before we have to fight for him to go. Do you know what I'm saying? I believe that this man is dumb enough to take on the whole country. I really do. All right, I'm on vacation. I love you. Please support us. While we're away, we're going to be doing some upgrades to the studio. Thank you. See you in a week.